This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Indeed, the only way to start your day. It's 7 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. Getting into other conversations this morning, but I have to remind you that the Cradle Study Abroad fair is taking place on the 31st of August. What is that, you ask? Well, okay, let's start with a little bit about Cradle. Cradle makes sure that you then get away from a number of the issues that affect when you're looking for an education outside the country, right? So many universities from many countries are coming together. The UK, the US, Grenada, also looking at Australia, New Zealand, Cyprus, across board. And what can you do when you attend the Study Abroad World Fair is that you can apply for admission and get it on the spot. You can apply for scholarships, get them also sorted out. You can also then get your visa consultation in place, and there'll be people on board to help you out, as well as sort out your accommodation information come that day. It takes place at the Gallant Mall on the 31st of August from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. What do you need to do? You need to register www.cradle.com, or you can call 0799 000 444 and get your education abroad sorted. Okay, so we're getting into conversations about what happens now for Kenyans after these two gentlemen decided to have a conversation. Helping us out with that is Wakili Fanya Mambo Kinudhia. He's in the room this morning. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the hot seat yet again. Fanya Mambo, how are you?
Very good morning. I'm happy to be here.
Good to have you here.
I'm honored to be here.
Well,
as usual, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure to have you here as well.
Yes.
We're going to start it off today. City's gone to the ocean.
Yes.
You know, and there's a thing about Africa when we go to the water. Okay. I'll allow him to tell you the rest. And our proverb for today. And then you tell us what you think about that, no?
We are looking at countries in Africa that have a coastline.
Yes.
That border the ocean. Now, you know, it's interesting. Africa is bordered by two oceans.
Yes.
The Atlantic and the Indian Ocean.
Indian Ocean.
And they meet somewhere at the southernmost tip of South Africa where the two oceans meet. Yes. The details of that one is for tomorrow. For now, the proverb. A man whose belly isn't full of straw isn't afraid of fire.
A man
whose belly, or let me say, the one, so that we make it gender friendly.
Thank you very much.
The one whose belly isn't full of straw isn't afraid of fire.
The ones whose belly isn't full of straw is not afraid of fire.
Yes,
it is at this point.
Yes.
That you tell us
Tell us.
your interpretation.
Yes. I think for me is, you see, straw burns when it catches fire. And so if you do not have things that would cause you to burn, then what would you be afraid of? So I think, taken in life's context, my understanding would be, why am I afraid of things that I think would harm me if I'm not possessed of those things that would be harmed by what would harm me? Like fire burns certain things, and straws is one of them. If I'm made of cement, why would I be afraid of fire?
Voila.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done.
So what does it mean?
What does it mean?
You've explained it very well. I want to tell me what you think it means.
Today's proverb is quite something. This
Isn't it
proverb
just?
is quite
Yes.
something. It's quite something. Leo umenipata vizuri.
Hapana, maoni yako baba si shida vile. Useme tu.
Yeah. I think in real life context, it means sometimes we don't have to be afraid of that which cannot affect us.
Indeed.
Yes.
Well said.
Well said. 1,000,000 points. Do with them as you wish.
Yeah.
City is feeling generous this morning. I speak on your
No,
behalf.
you've done well.
Thank you very much.
And your interpretation is good.
Okay, so one would think, Fanya Mambo, that there is a Ruto-Raila power axis from the very beginning, that there is an actual power axis here, and that they've come together and they forged this power so strong, and that is the reality. What it means for Kenyans is a totally different thing. So if we did an overview of that, in the last couple of weeks, many things have happened, many things have been said, people have been appointed, people have said, we're going back to the old times, and maybe not so old, whereby this power play was going to come about, whether we liked it or not. What's your overview, first of all, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what exactly has happened over the last, give or take, 1 month, and what it means for Kenya moving forward?
First and foremost, this is a horrible come-we-stay marriage.
Okay.
It's actually a come-we-stay because we did not see the signing of the marriage certificate, and it's a horrible one. And now we have, I don't know what to call a frog. Is it an insect, or is it a creature, or is it a mammal because it lays eggs? Because this is an amphibian government. Oh. And this amphibian government, now we have people who want to be in opposition and they want to be in government at the same time. And this is the likes of ODM. And I have a problem because I have seen them fighting with the Jeremiah Kionis and saying they're in Azimio. At the same time, they are fighting and saying they're properly and squarely within government. How can you be in Azimio, which is purely opposition, and at the same time be in government and run government? And what worries me even the more is now the people who are replacing them in parliament, the Junet Mohammeds, because you see the leader of minorities basically supposed to be the leader of opposition in our current constitutional structure. How will they ask questions to people they considered to be their seniors in the party? So it means that now, in fact, we have completely and totally no opposition left in this country. And that's a bad place to be.
Why? Because the opposition is meant to check the executive and all its doings. And if the group that was meant to be the opposition is now in the, what did you call it, come-we-stay arrangement.
Yes, they're in a come-we-stay marriage.
Then it is very difficult. Is it not possible for husband to check wife or wife to check husband?
It's not possible. Actually, in law, you're not allowed to you're not allowed to testify against your spouse. It's not acceptable. It's not admissible. So I think it's a horrible place to be because I do not see Junet Mohammed checking on Paddy. I don't see. I don't see that cannot happen. And I don't see totally, completely, we now have no opposition left in this country. What we now have is a group of people who are sitting together to siphon from Kenyans. What? And I actually at some point offered myself, only that some people stopped me. I'd carried some 2 plastic chairs and a table, and I wanted to declare myself leader of official opposition. In fact, I wanted to mount them. You see where Kimathi's statue is every Tuesday and every Thursday. And Kenyans just come. And, I had a banner even, the official leader of opposition. My lawyer friends took away everything from me and they told me, you can't do that. You're turning yourself into an activist and we already made you a leader. So I'm still waiting to get an office somewhere, but I will offer myself to be official leader of opposition in the interim until we get some sense into this country, because what is happening is unacceptable.
Fanyamambo, does that not seem a little skewed? I mean, the fact that you have people who claim to be in the opposition and you claiming that they are not in the opposition, and you also claiming that the position of those in the opposition is actually vacant, hence you're offering yourself, surely. Does that not sound as though you found a niche where you decide to place yourself comfortably in the
There's a political vacuum somewhere.
Yes,
and nature does not allow for...
So let me fill that vacuum.
Nature doesn't allow for vacuum. It's not even me feeling it. Nature is thrusting me into that space. Like a bomb. There's displacement and I'm being thrust into it. Claiming it. Yes, and I'm accepting it very comfortably and happily and embracing it and saying, I just need a plastic chair, and I already had 2, and a table and an umbrella, and I can do it from anywhere in the streets. As long as Kenyans know when to come, and you just come with any dossier that needs expose, and we'll expose it as long as you have the facts right. Because this is what Kenya needs. You just need someone who's courageous enough to say, this is what is going wrong here.
You're saying that those who present themselves as the opposition are not brave enough?
Right now, they are brave enough to go into bed with government. That's the only brevity they've shown us.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing else. There's nothing else. Because right now, things are wrong. Look, we are looking at a looming teacher strike, in as much as we shall be having that conversation later. And we are being told there's no money to pay teachers. But we have money to print more money. Kenya,
hire more people in government and executive
there's
level.
14 billion available to print more money. Who told them we have a money problem in this country? In fact, I dare submit to everybody in this country that some of the money being held by politicians in their houses and some rich people in this country, if it was be released, we don't need to print money. Kuna watu wameweka pesa nyingi sana in the billions. I remember there's a guy who died of a plane crash, and in his office alone there was more than 700 million. And of course there are people who we hear are rumored to have safes, and others who have container loads of money. And I thank God Uhuru that time when they phased out the old currency, and so many people lost billions because they used to keep money in the house. I think that bad manners of keeping money in the house has to stop first. We have a lot of currency available in this country. We don't need to print more. Nyinyi mutoe pesa mulete ikuwe in circulation. Yeah.
I guess my question would be, why is it when they say they are still in the opposition, you don't believe them? They are saying it themselves. We are still here in the opposition.
Where do opposition leaders carry flags? Where do they drive flagged cars and go to State House and sit in cabinet? Have you ever seen an opposition that sits in cabinet? Let's start there. Because this is insanity. Not unless we want to start redefining the opposition. I have never seen an opposition leader who sits in cabinet and drives a flagged car and is provided with an office by the government to... It doesn't happen. They don't sit in cabinet.
So it's based on what you see? That your definition is based on what you see?
No, it's based on... You see, I'm a lawyer. And when we went to school, we were taught about separation of powers. We were even taught about... Now, I'm learning new things we have never seen in any book anywhere. I mean, you can imagine the Democrats waking up one day and they are in bed with the... what do you call these guys? The Republicans. And some of the Republicans are ministers in our Democrats' cabinet. That nonsense doesn't happen anywhere other than in Kenya.
Yes.
By partisanship.
But surely, Ken is asking a question.
Yeah.
I think respond to Ken's question.
By partisanship. When you mention Republicans and Democrats. In fact, the first year of Barack Obama, we saw this happening. He tried to reach out to have a government, a bipartisan government.
Yes.
He was seeking their hand in everything until he realized it's not working. But also, your position presupposes that Raila Odinga is the opposition leader and opposition is Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga ceases to be in the opposition, there's no position, and then there is a vacuum. Now, Kinuthia wants to fill it.
No, it doesn't presuppose that he's the opposition leader. But there's a party that has got a minority, and it's recognized in parliament. And actually, they said the leader of minority is one, this funny guy who's just left his seat as member of parliament. And I'm happy to forget his name every time, because then it helps us as a country, because we need to forget such people. And now the leader of minority has left. Maybe Opio something. One was somewhere. That one.
The one who is now CS Energy.
I don't want to remember the docket he's holding. No. And I'm trying to forget, because I want Kenyans to forget these people. Because we need to forget such people who take us to such heights. So this is the officially recognized leader of minority, according to our constitution. Is saying that I'm no longer leading the minority and joining the Kenya Kwanza. Is it? And now they are siphoning the country together. It's not acceptable.
Okay, Mambo.
Yeah.
What do you understand by the term coalition?
Where people sit together and eat. Because in coalitions in this country don't make sense.
Okay, in a political sense, we're just a pure definition, which if you were to juxtapose the reality of our country, of course, we would not serve us well. But when you form a coalition, what exactly are you doing?
I think they are coalescing to eat. Because the things that we had said no to, including the finance bill, now have all of a sudden become holy. And I can see the leader, I can see Mbadi saying that they are going to look for some of the things that were rejected in the finance bill and bring them back. So they are coalescing to eat. Let's
look at this historically, shall we?
Yeah.
Every time a coalition has been formed in this country, it has been after there's been some sort of conflict, right?
Yes.
Or there has been some sort of dissonance when it came to governorship, usually after an election.
Yes.
I don't know that there has been a coalition whereby there is no dispute over the election process. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Kenya, at least.
Right.
All right? So 2007, 2008, after the post-election violence, is probably when we saw one of the most memorable coalitions come about.
Yes.
Probably one of the most memorable ones, okay? We saw, CORD, we saw then coming together, then we saw the formation of, there was a Rainbow Coalition prior to that. But usually it was they came together because if they didn't come together, the country was going to be thrown into a deeper conflict, and it was not good for, number one, sovereignty. It was not good for the people. It was not good for livelihoods. So when we saw coalitions come about, it was to avert a particular situation. But what I'm hearing you say is that coalitions have been formed in this country so that political cronies can come together and put on their bibs and eat from this pot of Kenya's resources. Where does the other side of coalition making come into play to avert essentially national crises?
I'll explain to you. We don't have a national crisis when we have language. I never saw a time when the president was willing to engage people before the crisis came about. Every time it was ntawakalia ngumu, wataniona, we will not allow, we will not shake hands, we will not move. I have always said every war that was ever won in the world, including the First and the Second World War, they were won with pens, not with guns and knives and weapons and batons and this nonsense we are seeing on the streets. This country can be built and this country can be brought together by conversations before we even have those conversations. The problem we had is that we had people on one side saying, oh, we are shareholders, and others saying, oh, we cannot shake their hands. If I shake their hands, I'll remove something I wear elsewhere and put it on the head. They said all sorts of stupid things. And that is what brought about the crisis. But I can tell you, if I was president of this Republic of Kenya, this nonsense of using batons and weapons and tear gas would come to an end because there's language and we can always have a conversation about very many things as a country. So that time they were saying the price of unga was high, the price of fuel was high, and someone was saying itawakalia ngumu. So it wasn't making sense. We would have had conversations and these would have been averted.
Are you aware that the very thing you said was said by the gentleman who's currently our president when he was campaigning? Everything that you've said, extrajudicial killing, abductions, everything that we said was abhorrent to us, he swore that it would not happen.
Yes.
The consequence, we've seen it in abundance, greater abundance than we saw it even before. And in this case, you are talking about young people who evidently were not harming anybody. All they were doing was saying, enough is enough. 60 Kenyans later, dead that is, here we are, against a backdrop of promises similar to the one that you're saying you will not. I am of this view that these promises people make in earnest are made when they're not fully cognizant of what it means to sit on that seat that they've wanted. Because when they sit there, something seems to change. A certain reality that...
Reality check.
Yes. A certain reality that they had hitherto not considered comes knocking, and it's persistent in its knocking, and they have no option but to adhere to that knocking.
I think the supplier of tear gas is their friend. And maybe they needed to issue that tender to them to supply more tear gas. But on a very serious note, first and foremost, this government coalition that has been formed is not a coalition to deliver anything to Kenyans. It is a coalition to deliver the 2027 election results in favor of William Samoei Arap Ruto. He's just put together a campaign machine for himself. And the reason I'm saying that is he has said, one, I don't need Mount Kenya in my next arithmetic.
He has said this?
Yes. By action.
Not expressly.
Not
yes.
expressly. Not expressly.
And I'll tell you how. He comes and looks at the coastal region and says, who's the best at the coast in terms of mobilization? Who is the most charismatic? Who can deliver coast if the coast needed to be delivered? He says Ali Hassan Joho. He goes to Western Province and says Western has got two axes. The first one is the Bungoma axis, and the second one is the Kakamega axis. The Bungoma axis is another story because there's George Natembeya doing Tawe and everything else. But the Kakamega axis, the one person who has always consistently delivered to Raila and is promising to deliver is Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya. And so he picks Oparanya. And he goes in every other place where he's looking for strong people to deliver regions that he believed he didn't have. And then he gets people who are strong, including getting Badi because he has got some influence in Luo Nyanza, though he lost an election. But then he comes to Mount Kenya And the people he appoints to his cabinet from Mount Kenya are people who cannot marshal 200 people to a meeting of a cattle dip if there was need to have 200 people together. Some people whose name we didn't even know. And those we knew, like our one minister for whatever, she's retiring. She's now at a place where she's retiring. She cannot mobilize Mount Kenya. Just to make sure that there's no unifying factor for Mount Kenya because it's a big block of votes. And to make sure that from those other regions, he gets people who can unite and bring enough votes for him in those regions. And so Mount Kenya will be left in its own political oblivion with some people whose names we are even struggling to remember even right now. And those ones are the ones who are being given cabinet posts. Now, at Mount Kenya, Munadanganywa, you're being told, oh, you see, you have 7. 7 what? Slots of what? Where was Munya when they were appointing Joho? They didn't remember Munya. They didn't remember big people like Motahi Kagwe. They didn't remember such names in Mount Kenya. They come to remember names of novices in politics.
So
and that's the problem.
So do you think, okay, I mean, I think I know the answer already, but let me open it up like this. So do you think that all of what we saw, or what we've seen that currently is the case, was divvying up the power to then foster support for the next rounds of elections that are coming up? Park that. We saw the protest that took place for easily a month in the country, and this is what we get as an answer to that. Does it solve that problem? Does this now new brand spanking marriage between whomever and whomever, does it sort out the issue that we saw that was taken to the streets the other day? Or are you saying that that was just kind of put on the back shelf? Okay, people have protested, they're done, they're out of steam, put them over there. What I'm looking for is support for 2027. So let me bring in my longtime political rivals. Let's all be on the same page so that they can catapult me to 2027. Is that what you're saying?
I think you don't understand the person of the president that we have in power today.
Okay.
He had already started campaigning for 2027 until Gen Zs rudely interrupted him. And he found it as a very rude interruption to his campaign. And he was wondering what is wrong with these young people. I'm already trying to campaign again for 2027 and they are coming. And he was launching very many projects. And I thank God for the young man who is doing whatever he's doing about those projects. But here comes the thing. Immediately, you are done and he starts appointing cabinet. He asks himself, what do I want? And the answer is he wants re-election. Who do I need to be re-elected? And he gets the people he needs to be re-elected. As to whether you care about finance bill or all those other problems we are talking about, that's none of his concerns. His primary concern is, am I going to be re-elected in 2027? And where do I feel weak? And whom do I need to fill the basket of votes? And he's working on that. And in this country, everybody is waking up and working on their own agenda. Even you woke up and you said, my agenda this week is this particular thing. Teachers are working on their own agenda. So everybody is on their own in this country. You wake up and do that which makes you happy.
So let's take a break on that point, shall we? Okay, so it's interesting to look into these different kinds of perspectives. Let's come and open the conversation up a little bit more. 7:30 on the nose. We'll come back, take a look at weather and traffic. Fanya Mambo Kinovia is in the studio this morning looking at this new power axis and asking ourselves the question, okay, what does it actually mean for Kenyans? Let's look at what it does mean for Kenyans and what it could do or not do in this situation. We'll be back after this.